Welcome to another weekly episode of Marked Out Radio. I'm Sean.
And I'm Dana.
And we had quite a busy weekend. So let's jump right in. We continued our run of these WWE ID prospect talents. And we were just talking about it yesterday so we had Jack Cartwheel yesterday morning. And it's actually, we were talking about yesterday how really fun it is to kind of talk to these prospects about what their future careers are going to look like.
Yeah, it's honestly, to me, a lot more interesting and just like enlightening to talk to the ones on the rise up than talk about, talk to the guys that have already been there and they're sort of, twisting their stories to make themselves look however they want to look. This is a lot more of an honest look, I feel, at their lives.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. Because I mean, the older guys have a tendency to, they look at the past in some of them a very sad way, some of them a very kind of rose-colored way. And these guys coming up now, they are, well, in some ways, I've been joking with you about this. They're children, how young they are and how they look at the world and stuff. It's pretty funny. Jack's been around for a minute. It's interesting the kinds of things that he would reveal to us and the kinds of things he wouldn't. And there were a few things that we said. There were a few details about things that we knew about various tapings and stuff that we said that he was like, "Who told you that? What? Where'd you hear that from?" So I mean, it's the kind of thing that we're absolutely not going to reveal publicly because these things were told, in confidence. But it's funny that because I imagine these younger people, especially, they have to sort of resist every impulse that they have to reveal everything on social media as soon as they hear it, and now they have to play this long-term game that they're just not accustomed to playing.
Yeah, because I mean, at a certain level of your career, and that's where most of these guys and girls are right now, they sort of ingrain in you that you should be publicizing and posting and sharing everything. That's how, like, you see, like, the independent wrestlers like a Cardona that have built this, like, following that grows weekly because that's what they do. They sort of bring you into their lives and share every step of the way. And then all of a sudden, these ID talents are like, they're independent still, but they're not. Like, you're independent, but you got to sort of adhere to WWE guidelines of let's not share out all the secrets. And I think it's a very fine line for anyone after you're changing your strategies like that, especially for these 20-somethings that are kids in a lot of ways, like you said. I think it's always interesting to see how the different personalities handle that.
Yeah, so Jack was great. We were in and out of there in under an hour.
Yeah.
And it was another good one in the book. So, we actually were kind of going through the list yesterday. Who else from ID we have to reach out to? So if you have contacts for anyone from ID who's not on our list, I mean, we'll take all of them. We'll figure out a way to work with all of them. Right now there's a couple more who aren't on our list who we're in the process of communicating with, but it's hard because, unfortunately, for the kinds of deals that we're doing, we have to wait for them to come to the East Coast, So someone like Jack, who already had a national touring and actually an international touring schedule, he was coming through New York, New Jersey area pretty frequently. Some of these other talents, they're relatively young and new to the business, and they haven't yet toured around the country, and they're not at that stage of their career, and so they really haven't been around. And they haven't yet come through New York. So if you catch any of the ID talents coming through to any of the indies in the area, and we missed it, feel free to reach out and let us know so that we can add them to our collection.
Absolutely right. It's one of those things where the indie companies around here and anywhere have the same like limitations we have. That you'd like to book X, Y, and Z on your show, but if they're based out of Kansas or Arizona or California, you can't go flying all these people in. It completely changes the math on an indie show. It changes the math on a signing. So you kind of have to catch them when they're touring. And for some of these people, like you said, they're not really at that point yet. They're immensely talented for, obviously they're on the ID list for a reason, but they don't really travel the the country yet. They kind of are regional, and that's like, the territory system is not really a thing anymore. But on the independent level, it's still very much real. Like there's the different territories and the loops and the different things that these guys are hitting, and they don't always intercept.
So after getting our signing done with Jack Cartwheel yesterday, we braved through a snowstorm, and we did make it to Bill Murray. And I have to say, from my perspective, I know that I was complaining pretty much for the past several weeks about having to go to this. I did. Well, I mean, look, at the end of the day, it was really a big batch of nothing. Truthfully, we were in and out very, very quickly. I think the meet and greet started at about 5:45 or 5:50, and we were out the door at 6 p.m. And then we were at the car by 6:10.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was really that fast, which is exactly what I hoped for and what I expected.
Yeah, we were on the end of the line, so it wasn't like it really moved quick. I know we're not usually big about the experience, but like, how was your actual interaction with Bill?
Minimal, which is exactly what I anticipated and expected and wanted. There's meet and greets they're always a little bit different. And so this one, you walked up and each of the band members, each of the Blood Brothers, as it were, shook your hand and said their name, and I guess ostensibly you said your name back. And so, I hand to God, I don't remember any of their names, but when you got to Bill said, "Hi, I'm Bill," which is always strikes me as funny when famous people do that. I mean, I guess the question is, what do you expect them to do? They're still human beings. And Bill was I know Bill has a reputation for being a little bit of a troll, for being a little bit of a challenging person in public. He came across in the meet and greet as a supremely normal person. He said, "Hi, I'm Bill." Literally, that's it. And he took the picture, and then I was gone. My goal again. I had my eye on the parking meter. So I wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. I didn't have any. I never really do have these illusions that we're going to say something profound in these circumstances, because I mean, how often in life do you say something profound anyway? And why is it going to be in the presence of the stranger? So your experience was a little bit different.
I think some of us say something profound on this podcast every week.
Yeah, in theory, I suppose, but you had a little bit of a different experience, and I don't know whether you consider it more fulfilling or I don't know, but yours was a little bit different.
I mean, yeah, it was a cool experience, but I mean, truth be told, had Bill Murray just like kicked me in my right testicle after the photo was taken, I would have probably been just as whatever about it, because I got the photo. Then that was the main point. I didn't pay for this for the whole like experience, but I had on a New York Mets sweatshirt, which was a little bit by design. I know Bill's a huge baseball fan.
Wait, so let me just hold on. I have to interrupt, because if we're going to tell the full story of it, then we have to really tell the full story of it. So let's air our insanity in public, okay? So we both had worn Marked Out Collectibles gear to meet Jack Cartwheel, because
correct.
When we do these signings, we typically like to wear professional gear. We have polos and hoodies and t-shirts and hats and things, depending on the weather, basically. And so just as a way to make sure that the talent recognizes us when we walk up, because it's not like we know each other's faces. And also, so it looks professional for the photograph. So we each had our Marked Out hoodies on, and you were genuinely, and this is something that is funny to me, you were genuinely like sort of concerned about wearing the Marked Out hoodie to the Bill Murray photo op.
Yeah, I didn't want Bill to think we were professionals.
I mean, my reaction now is probably the same as my reaction yesterday. I thought that was funny. I don't think Bill had. I said my exact line to you was, I don't think Bill is going to look at us like human beings. Never mind whatever, wearing whatever shirt or paying attention to whatever shirt. It is very clear based on the clothing choices of the other people in line that Bill was not paying attention to. The clothing choices ran the gamut of, there was a dude in front of me who was in a tuxedo, not even a suit, a tuxedo. There were people who looked like they were just rolled out of a barn. Jerry was dressed in a full graphic Ghostbusters 2 t-shirt that really had to be seen to be believed how colorful it was.
He was dressed like an NES cartridge. Like, yeah.
It was so brightly colored, and so and Bill's really reaction didn't change very much. But that was the reason why you had the Mets hoodie on, was because you couldn't bear to be in the marked out hoodie on the off chance that Bill saw you wearing an autograph dealer hoodie and then just turned and sprinted from the building.
Yes, that was part of it, but I chose when I knew I was changing. I chose the Mets hoodie because I know Bill is a Mets fan, not a Mets fan, a baseball fanatic. He is a Cubs fan. He travels around the country, sort of showing up at random baseball stadiums. And for the record, I'm not saying he really would have gone running into the snow because of the marked out hoodie, because clearly he didn't with yours. But he was cognizant of what people were wearing. He saw my Mets hoodie, so I mean, he was somewhat aware. But in any case, when I approached him, he made a remark like, "Oh, the Mets." And I said, "Come on, Bill, I've suffered enough. Basically leave me alone." And then he was laughing and he whispered to me, I think it was after the photo was taken or between the two shots. He's like, "I think this might be your year," which is either a great sign that Bill Murray has in the Mets season his blessing, or it's like the curse of the Bambino. This is the curse of the Murray, and only I'm aware of it since it didn't happen on a large scale. And Bill has just cursed the Mets.
So in any case, you had, I guess we could call that a little bit more of a profound interaction than I did, but regardless, it was a good time. We were out there pretty quickly, and honestly, the photos turned out great. Bill does look like a little bit like a reanimated corpse, but I guess we all do in our mid-70s. So there's that.
I think Bill looked fine. Bill looked great. He could still bust a couple ghosts, I think.
I don't know. But it was better than I thought it was going to be. It was fast. Let me tell you though, the night before, the Friday night show, they had the meet and greet after the concert, and it was something like 11 o'clock at night. I would have had a very, very, very different day if they emailed us and told us the hours going to be 11 o'clock at night.
Poor Ira was up there suffering. He was live texting. Bill didn't hit the stage until nearly 10 o'clock, I think it was, because he was at the SNL concert. And he came, by the time he was out of there, Ira, with the photo up, it was 11:30, 11:40, which is,
ungodly.
That's
ungodly. I would not. I would have died. So I'm glad I'm alive, and the reason why I'm alive is because that meet and greet was before the show and not after. Because this recording would not be happening right now because I would be dead.
And before we move on from the Blood Brothers, I had a couple comments and questions about the poster. So do you want to let everyone know, did we get a signed Bill Murray Blood Brother poster?
We did not. So the poster is a really, really high quality silk screen poster. And what's crazy is I know the manufacturing cost on these is $15. They're very, very expensive to make, these posters. And it's really, really nice. But it is unsigned, and so I don't know if there's any value. If anyone's in the market for one of these unsigned Bill Murray posters, I will happily sell it to you. Make me an offer.
Yeah, same. I'm usually the resident hoarder here on this show, but I'm going to be putting mine up for sale. I think I have no use for that.
Yeah, it's not signed. It's nice, and if I were someone who were interested in whatever the Blood Brothers were doing, then I would be, I guess, interested in that. Probably not. Posters are really not my thing in that way. It's a really nice poster, but I don't want it. So I'm happy to sell it at whatever price someone wants to give it to me for. Yeah, that's it. So there's unsigned. I know there were rumors that there were some in the initial shows that were signed by the other brothers without Bill. There were other ones, people claiming they had them signed by Bill. These were just taken out of a shipping box. So clearly the brothers had not even been exposed to them. Then they did not breathe the same air as these posters.
Yeah, honestly, I have to look around and just I'm curious, how many stops were these actually signed, or was that urban legend? Like, I've never actually seen a picture of a signed one. I've just just heard through the grapevine that the initial stops were
It's a
signed.
weird thing because you'd think like with social media, this kind of stuff would be easier to discern. But even like with the Russell Crowe appearances, there was so much misinformation and just wrong information about these kinds of things, and it's actually frustrating. I feel like years ago we get a report on Marked Out, and that would be the end of it. And now you have to like troll through social media to try and find an accurate report, and have to like avoid people's weird like lies or conspiracy theories or FUD or whatever. And I don't know. People are not. The moral of the story is people are insane, and either lie or speculate instead of just like stating what happened, or God forbid saying, I don't really know, I wasn't there. So anyway, that's my rant on that. But hopefully you do find out what if there any of them were signed. My hypothesis is that none of them were actually signed, because it stands to reason given what given how these were distributed. It was a pretty loosey goosey meet and greet. You know, we went down to the basement. They didn't even scan our tickets initially. They ran out of lanyards, and when I asked the guy, I'm like, we didn't even get lanyards. They ran out. He was absolutely unconcerned. He's like, we have more downstairs. It's no big deal. I was like, okay. And then we went down, and honestly, though, how many meet and greets were sold? Maybe 50, 40? There were not that many at all.
No, it wasn't sellout on a meet and greet level. So that's all they allotted for the night. It wasn't much. I honestly don't know. Bill didn't hit the stage last night until 9. So I don't know why they didn't sell a couple more, make some extra money. But, like I said, there's a reason Bill's not sitting at the fan expos and the NYCCs of the world. I think there's certain limited interactions he can sort of handle and wrap his head around. And I guess he wouldn't want a line of 300 fans.
I did. I don't know if did you check the merch table?
I checked it like as I was heading to the bathroom. I kind of like looked without slowing down. I saw vinyl records. I saw T-shirts. I saw a plethora of things I would have no interest in. Nothing looked signed.
Well, I was. That's what I was. I did scope out the merch table to see if there was any signed merchandise. There did not appear to be any signed merchandise. So, if anyone was wondering, there were no Bill Murray autographs available, at least at the New York City stop at Sony Theater.
Yeah. And like after the Macaulay Culkin one, I made that big prediction where he would go on a potential convention run. I think Bill honestly was every bit as nice as Macaulay in this setting, but I would make the opposite. I don't think there's a chance in hell you'd have Bill at a convention. I think, like I said, Bill, he's performing, he's standing there, he's casual. If you sat Bill at a table with freaks asking him to switch pens, and by freaks I mean people like us, and
Absolutely.
write this and put it on this part of the poster, and he would run out of there. He would run, the way I was afraid he'd run from the Marked Out Collectibles hoodie. Like, he will never be at a convention as long as he lives. So if he does any more of these concerts, I think you should absolutely jump on it. And speaking of which, I saw, or I should say more accurately, we didn't see a number of like familiar, like Northeast faces that you would typically see at one of these things. My hypothesis is that all of that early speculation of would the photo ops be like group photo ops with every audience member combined, like Keanu. I think all of that crazy talk that had no real basis of in any sort of reality. I have to imagine that sort of kept some of these people at bay and made them a little nervous.
I think so too. I think a lot of these people. And again, I hate to both A, bash our own audience, and B, beat this horse to death. But I think there's like significant mental illness and crippling anxiety in this hobby. And so you get people who were just going nuts about it. This is months and months ago. We saw posts online, people going nuts about what this appearance would look like, that we were not going to get it, that it was going to be group photos instead of individual photos, all these things. And, people completely bent out of shape. And I do think that, look, we saw a bunch of regulars. I recognize it's incredible how many of these faces I recognize, and I don't really know their names, but I see them in a bunch of stuff. But there were a lot of people who we didn't see. That was a little bit surprising.
And also, just to sort of tie up that whole thing, I think there's definitely the anxiety factor of it. And I think also, just in fairness, what did we pay for that ticket? It was like, what, $3 and change?
Yeah.
For some of these people in the hobby, that's a week's paycheck. So, I mean, I guess if there's any, rightly so, if there's any sort of skepticism that's going to go the way you want it to go, and you're going to go drop a week's paycheck on it, I guess I could understand the hesitancy on that level as well. But yeah, I mean, for people that didn't go, if he does them again, I think I would be even more confident than I was this time. That's going to be okay. It seems like Bill, they sell enough that Bill can sort of handle it, and he seems to be a gentleman at all of these stops.
Yeah. So we did get some fan reports, various autograph activity over the past week. You got some. Yeah, we got a few actually.
Yeah, we got Martine in Chile, or as you pronounce it better than I do.
Oh, Chile. When you say Chile, it makes it sound like a crock pot full of beef.
Yeah,
it's a country, but it's Chile. But anyway, I don't know. I always try. This is way off out there, but I always try to, as an American, try my best to, pronounce other people's countries the way they pronounce them, at least to the best of my ability, only because I try to resist that stereotype of that Americans are just insular and don't really pay attention to how other people, do things around the world. So I try to be a little bit like that. I'd probably mangle half of these things, but I do try. So yeah, and it's one of those things. Martine had sent his post in on, and you did a post on Facebook, and he replied. A couple of them we had talked about. He met Aja Kong and a couple other Japanese lady wrestlers. He also met Patti Smith, I think, which is super cool. And he brought up a couple more that he's going to have this week, so which I look forward to seeing.
Yes, absolutely. Keep it up, Martine, and share away when you get the upcoming stuff. And then we also heard from our man on the NYC streets, Vinny. Vinny was out and about for the SNL 50 celebration. He hit the concert they had. Were you aware of that concert going on at Radio City, Sean?
I was not. I mean, I did. Was that the one where there was something with Post Malone doing Nirvana?
Yeah.
I saw clips of it on social media after it had happened, which is useless for the purposes of what we're talking about here.
Yeah. But Vinny shared a whole bunch of his successes and his failures, so I'm just going to run through them really quickly. Outside the concert, he got photo ops with T-Pain, David Koechner from Anchorman, Molly Shannon of SNL fame, Bob Odenkirk and Al Franken signed a little bit after Radio City. Jerry Seinfeld apparently took one photo with a fan and got in his car. I'm shocked he took one photo.
Any guesses onto what the demographic of that fan was?
Probably, I would guess woman. I would guess a female. Just for him to take a little bit more mercy. In my encounter with Jerry, and I'll tell the story ever so briefly. Jerry was going to a Knicks game when I saw him, and he hopped out of the car. Well, I mean, at first he looked kind of afraid of all of us. So he sat in the back of the car, sort of like a man on safari, and he was looking out the window, and he wasn't really opening the door. Then he opened the door and exited. And to Jerry's credit, he's a pretty good signer. He's just one that doesn't normally want to stop and pose for photos. So what I did, which is one of my go-to moves, I threw my camera in video mode and I put it in the selfie mode and I just, let the camera roll. And Jerry's normal demeanor, at least in my encounters, has been, he doesn't mind if you're doing that. He's not going to look away. He's not going to, cover his face or anything like that. He's just not going to actually stop and pose. If you get him looking in the camera organically, cool. He's not going to try to block you from doing that. But if you say, "Can I get a photo?" he's going to say no. That's what he does. And if Vinny saw him take a genuine photo, I would have to imagine it was with a woman. But in any case, very cool.
Although, have you seen the famous viral video of Kesha asking Jerry Seinfeld for a hug?
Yes. I love it.
It's one of my favorite videos of all time, actually.
Jimmy Fallon, Post Malone signed autographs on their way from 30 Rock into Radio City.
Not surprising for those two.
No, they're like the coolest people you could find. Vinny's buddy got Sandler and Peyton Manning to sign at the after party at 2:30 a.m. A little surprising for Peyton. Sandman is always cool. He's always hooking it up. Breaking news: Chevy Chase is a dick. He just said no. I mean, that's sort of what Chevy Chase is known for. So I'm glad Chevy's sticking with his old ways. John Lovitz took some photos, but he couldn't get close enough to him. Let's see. David Byrne didn't stop. Robin, the singer, blew him a kiss. Brandy Carlisle told him to stay warm. Snoop Dogg waved. Jelly Roll waved. Jelly Roll's apparently a bit of an ass. I haven't heard a lot of. He's difficult from what I hear.
Snoop has always been great. So it must have been an absolute mob scene out there.
Lorne Michaels is emotionless. I'm not entirely. If Vinny wants to comment on our show graphic, what he means by emotionless, that would be great. I'm not entirely sure. But it doesn't sound like a good thing.
Maybe he no-sells the presence of a crowd.
I guess. He must have no-sold the yells and stuff. And then this was pretty interesting. Paul Rudd popped out at the SNL concert, and there were apparently two people, Vinny and someone else, went up to him, and Paul's answer was, no, this has become a thing. And I really don't know what that means, because, it's been a thing for, over a decade. I myself have harassed him on numerous occasions, always successfully. It's I don't know how it's become a thing now. I guess he didn't want to be bothered, which is his prerogative, but that's a little bit of a weird answer. Apparently, he was hanging outside Radio City chatting with James Franco for a half hour and still wouldn't do it. That's always weird. Have you ever been in a situation like that when you ask someone on the street, for a selfie or whatever, they reject you and then they just stand there for 5, 10, 15 minutes? Have you ever had that happen?
No, because honestly, and this is going to sound weird, but I haven't had too many rejections, truthfully.
Yeah, I guess.
So, no.
I had one like that with Terrence Howard, one TV week, where I asked him for a photo and he said no because he was sick. And then his car was delayed. And then he actually walked over to me later. And he's like, I'm sorry. I don't think I was being an asshole or whatever. I'm really sick. He still didn't do it, but he felt bad about still standing there. But yes, he just stood there. Apparently Franco was drunk and took selfies. Vinny was still focused on Paul Rudd, so he did not get anything with Franco. But nice to see that Franco is out being drunk in public again, because he's been sort of off the radar after, which is the weird thing about society. He was in the news for messaging 15-year-old girls who attended his Broadway show. And we all kind of just, laughed at it and said, okay, that's James being James. And then, he was Me Too'd for, the same kind of thing. And then everyone, including Seth Rogen, just cut him off, which... I'm not saying that's not a good reason to stop talking to someone, but you should have done it after the Broadway play when it was literally the exact same thing. But whatever. Who am I to judge? So, and then to close off Vinny's encounters, last night he didn't have a VIP ticket for Bill Murray because they had sold out too quick. So he was outside in perfect position for Bill coming in. And Vinny says he had his photo and paint pen ready, which a paint pen on Bill Murray on the street is ballsy.
It's bold. It's a bold move, yeah.
It is. I respect it. Bill Murray, he said, Mr. Murray, would you sign, please? And he loudly and nastily said, this is a music show, not an autograph signing, which I guess maybe that's why the posters weren't signed. He apparently told Vinny that twice because I guess the first time he wasn't sure if he heard him. I don't know. He was a real ass. And yeah, so I guess much like Chevy Chase, Bill Murray is keeping his reputation on the street intact.
It's funny though, because I think this actually had the double whammy of being a show where Bill already has a meet and greet. You know what I mean? Because look, there are plenty of people who've gotten Bill, but it's very, very, very situation dependent. And I think your chances at an event like this were lower than normal, given the fact that he was already doing meet and greet with people. I think it was just one of those things that it was a pretty bad decision to try that way instead of just trying for a meet and greet. These meet and greets didn't sell out quickly. They were available for days. So I don't know. It was actually we were both kind of shocked at how long they lasted,
Yeah.
So it wasn't a fortuitous move to do that, I don't think. But
listen, I do absolutely respect the attempt because if you don't have a ticket and you're there anyway, you might as well give it a shot. You're gonna miss every shot you don't take. But the thing with Bill is he's weird about people that are waiting for him. He's not like, I think most of your good experiences with Bill are like you bump into him at a baseball game and you're not waiting for him. You don't have a Ghostbuster poster. You don't have anything like that. And it's just a sort of an organic moment of there's Bill. The golf course is another one that I've seen a number of successes where I think people even bring merch on the golf course. I guess he's in a good enough mood because he's golfing. I don't know. But yeah, it's tough. There's nice people that won't do it outside for free when they have a paid meet and greet.
Right. So that was my point. I think with a character like Bill, you're not getting something outside of meet and greet. Meanwhile, people were hitting when Arnold was around for book signings, people were hitting him at the hotel and he was racking. So while he was getting on his way to the book signings, so it's just really a matter of how people respond to those kinds of situations, and what their overall kind of vibe is. What else was that? Was that it for? That's it for the fan.
So thank you, Vinny and Martine, for those awesome shares. And if you want your encounter and your all your happenings to be talked about on the podcast, just post them up on our Facebook group. If you're not on the Facebook group, get them to us in a comment or an email.
If you're not in the Facebook group, what the hell are you doing?
I know. I mean, it's growing by the week. You absolutely should be on it, but some people are, I guess, allergic to Facebook.
I don't know. I mean, that's not I even love Facebook, but that's kind of where we're forced to conduct our business, So there's been a little bit of con news this week, but honestly, not a hell of a lot. I was actually surprised that some of the big cons had a soft week in terms of what their announcements were. I guess the big news of the week is, we had mentioned a week ago that Monster Mania of Cherry Hill had canceled Freddie Highmore, and I believe that was, we didn't have the replacement name yet, right?
No. I think I wished for the one it ended up being, but I predicted it would be David Howard Thornton.
So it is Tobin Bell, and they actually added Shawnee Smith as well to do a full Saw reunion. Full disclosure, if I am not a Saw person, but if you are even a little bit, you need to get your butt to Cherry Hill because Tobin Bell is in his 80s, and let's realistically, how much more touring does he have in him? I mean, he used to do tons of cons, and now his appearances are much, much, much rarer because of his age, I presume. So
yeah, I will be making the drive down there. I would love to get autographs. I just don't think I'm going to deal with what it entails. I actually even kicked tires on getting a private signing set up with Tobin Bell, and the numbers just didn't work out with like what we'd be doing. It was a extremely like large commitment that I really that we're not prepared to make right now on Saw merchandise. But so I think I'll just be heading down there for a pro op, and the way the lineup is going, I honestly might just show up at the pro op time, take the picture, and then get back in my car and head right back up the turnpike. Because there's not much else I need. And I know there's still some time, but not that much. I mean, we're talking under a month now. So yeah. I think this might be a group Saw op and done for me, which my pockets will, I guess, enjoy a little bit.
So you'd go for the group?
I have to. He's going to die. He's old.
But you wouldn't just do him by himself?
I think I'd go for the group up.
Fair.
I've reached the point in my life where like all the group ops we've gotten lately, like even ones that I've had the people, like I do not regret the Dexter cast op. You might. I don't. I do not regret the Sons of Anarchy trio, even though I had all three of them individually. Those, especially when it's sort of, Tobin Bell at this point is 10 years removed from being on Saw. But I think he looked half dead then, so I think he probably looks the same. I
would say he looks pretty much the same. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna take.
He's an old guy.
It's an extra $100 maybe for the group op. Screw it. I'll take it. If somehow I hate if Shawnee Smith like ruins the photo, I'll prop her out. I don't think she will, but I'll just do the group op and have no regrets. And you are, where are you going to be for this? You are at the at your work trip, right?
Yeah. I'm on a work trip, so I'm sitting out Monster Mania entirely that weekend. There's no way to make it work. It's not possible. I mean, unless we were to go in on Sunday. But is he even going to be there on Sunday, Tobin?
He's not.
Yeah, so that just it's impossible.
Yeah.
So you're going in on Friday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
Most
just not it's not
likely.
happening for me. What's the other option?
There really isn't one.
Saturday.
So it'd have to
Yeah,
be.
there is a one. It has to be
Yeah.
Friday. And so also, it's funny because I sometimes there are shows that just sort of slip through the cracks and then never really on our radar. But there are actually two shows on the East Coast that are kind of interesting. So there's New Jersey Horror Con, which is in 2 weeks in Edison, New Jersey. I don't know how the heck I missed it before now, but the cool thing about that show is they're doing a Blair Witch Project reunion, and I think Blair Witch Project is one of those movies that you really have to be a particular age and a particular kind of fan of movies to recognize its historical significance. Blair Witch Project changed the way that guerrilla films and indie films were marketed and how they were perceived by the public. It was massively influential. Is it a good movie? I mean, I don't think it is, but it is an interesting movie and an important movie. And so to have a full cast reunion for Blair Witch in Edison, New Jersey it's honestly a sick reunion in my opinion.
Yeah. I think I was a little young when it first came out, but like I very much remember the hype of like seeing the commercials at the time. I think I watched it for the first time like probably 3 or 4 years ago. And
the problem is watching it after everything else came out after it, or the movies that it influenced came out. It's not going to have any significant impact.
Yeah, like it wasn't great, but at the same time, it was fun. I like even now I enjoyed it enough. It was fun. The thing is, seeing this reunion, I'm actually like slightly tempted. But do I really want to go the week before big event and add another convention to my docket? Probably not. Could I change my mind? Sure. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's very lousy timing. We're in con season now, the spring season, and the amount of shows will just hit you all at once, and it's like you got to try to pick and figure it out. But I really wish, honestly, either Chiller or Monster Mania, would add a Blair Witch reunion, because I would absolutely love to do that. That's an interesting one for me.
I can't imagine that wouldn't fly well at a Monster Mania, especially. Like, I think it absolutely would.
I feel like they did it at a Chiller once, and it was one of the shows I didn't go to. That for some reason that's like ringing a bell for me. But I also could be misremembering. That's also something that I would do. So I'm not really sure, but I think it's a cool reunion. Also, New Jersey Horror Con is also running a show in May in Atlantic City. I'm actually stunned that they are still running this show. Last time I went, which was 2 years ago, it was a ghost town. I mean, the draw was horrifically bad.
Honestly, I think Atlantic City is barely drawing people into casinos, let alone conventions. So I mean, it's not the destination city that I think some of these conventions assume it to be.
Unless they get a really great deal running the Showboat, because the Showboat, let's be honest, if you've never been, is a dump, and there's no more polite way to describe it. It's an awful venue. But they're doing these smaller horror shows can do kind of cooler things that the larger ones can't do. They're doing a Friday the 13th Part 5 reunion, and you might think, well, that's really obscure, and you'd be right. But if you're a Friday the 13th Part 5 mega fan, you're not getting a better show than that. It's about as good as it gets. So that's kind of neat. It's kind of cool that they're able to do such a niche reunion. So like, it's not drawing me. I have no interest, but like, God bless. If that is your movie, you're gonna have a killer time. So I think that's really cool that those small shows are able to do that the larger shows just can't do. So I think it's just cool for what it's worth.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in to close off our news segment, Chiller Theater has added Gina Gershon, and a lot of people in general are being, I think, pretty critical of the lineup so far. It's not a great lineup by any stretch, but at the same time, I think they're only about 35 to 40 names in, and they usually have 75 to 80. So I think there's enough time where this could really turn around. So I'm not jumping to conclusions yet, but so far it's not great.
I will not be attending Chiller this year either. So which is not. I also have a commitment that weekend. But I mean, Gina Gershon is one of those names that's would have been creative 5 years ago, but now has been around to every con. She did all the big ones. So she was at the Steel Cities and the Rhode Island. Was she at Rhode Island? I don't remember. But she was at Steel City. She was a big name guest and she was at a couple of the the bigger shows. And now she's going to do a loop on with the smaller shows, but she didn't really even draw great at Steel. So I don't know what. Didn't. So I mean, look, she doesn't really have a ton of star-making credits, so I don't really know what the. I don't know. I don't. I mean, it's a cool name, I guess, but definitely not one that's going to move the needle in any meaningful way, which is I guess unfortunate for them. But that's how it goes. And I guess if she's taking Chiller bookings, then that's a whole other. That is an interesting concept for someone to go from the guaranteed money bookings to the not guaranteed money bookings. So that's a kind of an interesting one from that perspective. But I don't think she's going to move the needle at all in terms of the draw for Chiller. But part of me, I hate to be selfish. Part of me doesn't want Chiller to add anyone good because I'm not going to be able to go. So I hope.
I mean, as is, you're missing Beecher from Oz.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. That's minimal. If they do like a big Oz reunion, if they bring in Adebisi or something, I would be furious to miss that. But I don't know. They weren't really hyping him as someone headline level, so I doubt it that they.
He's kind of low on the list, and I don't think they're going to build any reunion. So far, he's on my list. Lee Tergesen. I didn't even notice this, but young Henry from Goodfellas is here. And honestly, there's a number of scenes with the young Henry Hill. That's actually kind of cool. But
he's done a decent run before. I don't know. I'm surprised. I feel like he's done Chiller before. Maybe you either weren't at that show or you.
Yeah, probably during my time where I didn't go because I would totally get him now. But
it's fine. It's one of those. It's kind of interesting. And I wish I could do Chiller, but it's just not in the cards, and it's all good. So if you're shopping for autographs, check out www.markedoutcollectibles.com or our eBay store at Marked Out Collectibles. To contact us for any reason, please email markedoutcollectibles@gmail.com or join the Marked Out Collectibles official marketplace on Facebook. All links are in the show notes on Facebook and Substack. And if you want your event, product, or brand advertised on episodes of Marked Out Radio, reach out to us today at markedoutcollectibles@gmail.com. Of course, you can also subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast, and you can leave a rating and or review on Apple Podcasts. You can leave a rating on Spotify, or you could leave thumbs up, thumbs down, or comments on YouTube. All engagement helps us out. So we promised in previous episodes that we would do some segments on like our almost like retro reports used to be on the board, stories of street meets that were interesting or funny or memorable times when we've met people on the street or we've gone out searching for autographs back in the day that would be amusing because we've been around a lot, we've seen a lot of things, and we do have some funny stories. So we were kind of combing our archives / our brainstorming basically to figure out what some of these interesting stories would be. And as always, if you have interesting stories of your own from the past that you would like to share, either have us read them for you or you can come on and tell them yourself. Shoot us an email or reach out on Facebook. So you're going to go first. You're going to talk about the time that you met Shia LaBeouf.
That's it. Yeah, the time I met Shia. I say LaBeouf. I'm not sure how is what the accurate way is. Much like Chile versus Chile. I say right on this one.
I say LaBeouf not to be right, but to be spiteful. So it's a little bit different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Sean, you will not divide us. So anyway, Shia LaBeouf back in 2017, after Donald Trump was elected the first time, like in that aftermath of all that, he created like an art installation at the museum in Astoria, New York, out in Queens. And essentially calling it an art installation is a bit generous. It was really just a white wall in like an abandoned like lot with the words "He will not divide us" on it, and a camera that was beneath the words. And essentially this camera would run 24/7. There was like a website that you would go on and you'd watch like this live stream, which was usually Shia LaBeouf standing in this field in this little lot in Queens. He would just keep saying the same thing over and over again. He will not divide us. He will not divide us. And you'd have a whole bunch of interesting looking specimens from the streets and the community coming out to see him and chant with him. And you had some people that would come to like support his movement. You had some that would come to not support his movement. He like famously or infamously got arrested at this art installation. Do you recall that at all, Sean?
I don't. I was really not plugged into the goings on of Shia LaBeouf at that time, and I remember you were talking about wanting to do this, and I was just thoroughly uninterested. He's really never been in anything that I like, so I think I'm never as interested.
I'm in the age group where like Even Stevens was a huge show for me as a late adolescent, like teen type age. It was awesome.
Yeah, if I got caught watching Even Stevens, I would probably go to jail. So,
so all that stuff, his movie run, but like, I'm not really a Transformers guy, but like Disturbia and Eagle Eye and a lot of those movies that I was watching at that point, I've always been a fan. So I knew he was doing this. This was, again, back in 2017. And it was one of those things that you don't know how long he's going to stay there. So you see him chanting on the camera at 10 a.m. If you then leave your house to board a train or to drive into Queens, by the time you get there, he might be gone. That was always my concern. So the first couple days or whatever went by and it wasn't happening. I believe, if memory serves, he was arrested prior to this, to when I went. So he was arrested. He came out of jail, and then he came back. And then you'd see on the camera he's back. So it was, interestingly enough, and I won't really go into this deep because this in and of itself could be its own story. You and I were in the city together this morning for another meet. Right. As you said, you had no interest. So we left. We went our separate ways. I was heading back for the train to go home when I decided on a whim, let me check my phone, let me pull up his feed, and let's see what the hell he's doing. Is he there? And sure enough, I'm in Manhattan. I see in Queens, Shia LaBeouf is there. He's screaming into the camera. He's doing his thing. So I raced to a subway. I remember there was delays and different things. I was really getting paranoid. I believe I actually had an appointment that afternoon that I canceled to run to this abandoned lot in Astoria to find Shia LaBeouf.
Having a normal one.
Yeah. I mean, why wouldn't you do that? So I show up, and I remember this distinctly. I saw a bunch of the protesters. It wasn't that many. It was like maybe 10 or less. Sometimes it would be packed to like 50, but it was like 10 or less people. And I thought,
were these people who were affiliated with him, or these were the random riffraff who happened to be walking by, or who were these people?
I don't know if any of them were really affiliated. I remember you would see people on the feeds like a lot. But I think it's probably just parasocial relationships where these people felt like, hey, if I hang around him long enough in this field, we're definitely going to end up doing lines of coke and, banging strippers together after this. Which, I mean, with Shia LaBeouf in that time period, that might not be that far-fetched of a goal. But I think it was mostly that. I think it was this riffraff that would come repeatedly to try to become affiliated with him. And I remember I saw all the riffraff, didn't see him, and I was pissed. And then I looked, and he was like sitting on a curb smoking and just talking to people about whatever, about politics. And at that point, I don't think he wasn't really clicking on all cylinders. So I think some of what he was saying was probably a little out there. And I remember, like, I approached him, and at that, he even still to this day, he's a little volatile. So you never know what you're really going to get. But I remember he like dapped me up. He hugged me. Like, he didn't know me from a hole in the wall, but he was friendly. Thanks for coming. I gave him some like BS about how it's so great you're doing this. And, I mean, it's so great you're shouting into a camera, in an empty lot. I mean, I suppose for my purposes, but like in general, I really couldn't care less if he was doing that. And I remember I asked him for a selfie, and he was, cool as can be. And I hung around a little bit more because somewhere I have screenshots of myself on this camera. I remember I like stared into the camera because I mean, as ridiculous as it is a moment in history to some level of pop culture history at the very least. And he, at this point, this was after he like roughed up a Trump supporter. So he was like, made some whole speech how he's not anti-Trump, he's anti-division, and that he has friends and family that are Trump supporters and he doesn't care. I think this was just him after he was in the news for like throwing a Trump supporter on the ground. He was trying to be a little more, PC. And yeah, I mean, I wish I had stuff to get signed, but I didn't. And yeah, it was a cool experience. He's a guy that honestly would be perfect for conventions. I think he would do great. But much like Bill Murray, I don't really know if he has the temperament for it. I think he would get pissed off. I think he'd get irritated. I don't really see it being in the cards for him. If anything, he seems to be running further and further away from celebrity and sort of embracing like the art, like his like resurgence. His movies have been more of like the art house variety. I assume you still don't care about anything he's done, right?
Not a thing. I wouldn't even be able to tell you what they are.
I've seen them all. I'm a huge, But I don't think he's doing a convention. So I think that always goes down as one of my more like oddball but just favorite encounters.
I mean, my story can definitely outdo you in the oddball category. Just for the bizarre circumstances of it. And so there's no other. I mean, people who know me pretty much know this story because it's one of those weird, quirky things that has happened. So, my friend is a yard sale person. I mean, he does a lot of reselling stuff. He does a lot of video game collecting and classic action figure collecting and all these things. He's always going to yard sales. And I remember he had when this was in the heyday of Craigslist. So I'm dating myself a little bit, but Craigslist is where you could find a lot of yard sale postings in
and
your
other
neighborhood.
things if you're class 316.
Right. Well, I mean, you were talking now a decade since then, but
yeah.
Anyway, my friend's habit was every time he came across a yard sale posting within a certain radius of his home, he would email the person and ask them if they had any video games, even if the video games were not advertised in their Craigslist ad, because sometimes these people didn't really know that old video games were valuable. So he would always ask it like hey, do you have any video games, junk that you want to get rid of? And that was his way of, trying to get classic stuff on the cheap. And so he was every week he would send out many of these emails. So he really didn't think anything of it. So he gets a response. He had sent the email and he got a response from someone. And the person who emailed him, the name was Dewey Foley. And he saw that the address for the yard sale was, on the North Shore in like Smithtown, I guess, in that area. And so, for anyone who knows Long Island and anyone who knows wrestlers knows that for the longest time, Mick Foley was from Smithtown and had a house in Smithtown, and he went to Ward Melville High School, and it was pretty well documented, and so Dewey Foley is not a common name by any stretch of the imagination, and so when he saw it came from Dewey Foley, he was like, "Do you think this is Mick Foley's house?" Where it's having the yard sale. And I was like, of course it's Mick Foley's house. Either someone is doing it as a joke or it's Mick Foley's house. Those are the only two possibilities. There's no other Dewey Foley living in Smithtown. It doesn't make any sense. So it only stands to reason. So we have to go to this yard sale. I mean, you have to go. What are you not going to go just to see what it's like, And so we made the decision to go. Now at this time, I was to add complete insanity to it. I was in the process of doing a full-size original double-sided Beyond the Mat poster. Now, Beyond the Mat was a documentary about wrestling that heavily featured Mick Foley and other Jake the Snake Roberts and New Jack and some other wrestlers and things. But it was noteworthy in this context that Mick Foley's whole family was in this documentary. In fact, there were scenes that featured them significantly. So I had this whole vision that I was going to bring this poster. They were going to sign it. In retrospect, it really is an insane and presumptuous thing. So it's just insane. The whole thing is insane. So we show up to the house, and I leave the poster in the car because I was too nervous and embarrassed to bring it out on the off chance that I didn't know what was worse. I couldn't imagine if it was worse than if it was them or if it wasn't them. I couldn't decide what was worse.
It honestly might be a photo finish. I'm not
so
sure.
It was a rough situation. So what do we do? So I leave it in the car, and I'm looking around. And we go up into the house, and in 2 seconds, I recognize his now ex-wife. Is it kayfabe that they're divorced, or
it might be?
All right. Well, his wife, Colette was her name, right?
Yeah.
So I see her, recognize her from the movie. I recognize her. She had been on the little vignettes on TV and whatnot. So I was like, oh, this is their house, And if I'm being perfectly candid, the yard sale was crap. There was just nothing of any interest there. It was all junk, exercise videos and stuff like that, women's clothes.
So there were no original Mankind masks or his
ears. And there were no video games either, which is my friend used. That's his thing. He collects good video games. There's nothing there.
Good job, Dewey.
Yeah, and so we're looking. So how do I initiate this conversation where I want to get them to sign this poster and also to take a photo with these people because it was not appropriate, And the only other people there were like their neighbors. You know what I mean? Like there were no other fans there. It was just, and I'm standing there, and it was one of those moments where I guess you just gotta just do it. So I make the decision, and this is where it gets really demented. I make the decision that it's going to be an easier thing. It's going to be an easier icebreaker to buy something from the yard sale, and then while I'm buying it, say, "Hey, aren't you Mick Foley's wife?" And this was the idea that I had in my head, which is really dumb, But that's the idea that I have in my head. So, but I can't stress enough that the items they had for sale were like thoroughly unappealing. There was nothing of any interest to me. So I grab what I perceive to be the cheapest item. And it's almost insane to say out loud, but the cheapest item was a novelty edible bra. So I walk up and I purchased this novelty edible bra from the Foley family. And I'm looking at it's still in its original box right here. And that was when I learned that, and this is many, many years ago, a novelty edible bra is made up of it's almost like Smarties on a string. That's what it looks like. In case you were wondering, that's what a novelty edible bra looks like. It's like Smarties on a string, in the rough shape of a bra. So I bought this thing, and now I realized at that moment that I'm holding this sex toy, for lack of a better word. And
that definitely made it less weird.
Yeah, right. And then, so I didn't buy like an old pair of garden shears, which would have been smarter, It was some kind of whatever, fishing pole or something. I'm holding this edible bra, and at that point, that's when I launch into, aren't you I recognize you from Beyond the Mat, and she was incredibly.
I think it only would have been worse if you would have grabbed like a dildo instead of the edible bra.
In some ways, that would have even been more comfortable, because I can't stress, because clearly either he bought it for her or she got it as a gag gift or some other thing happened, but it was, So anyway, I'm holding this thing, and I asked her, and she was incredibly nice, and I said, I actually have a Beyond the Mat poster. Would you mind signing it for me? And she, of course, go get it. So I'm running, and of course they're rich, so their driveway was really long. So I raced down the driveway and grabbed it out of the car and come back up. And she goes, "Oh, this is really cool." And she goes, "Would you want me to get the kids also?" And I'm like, "Would that be too much trouble?" And that's when she called out, "What's the daughter's name?"
Noelle.
Because Noelle is really the kid who's most featured in the movie, because Noelle she's young, she's crying hysterically in this movie because Mick is covered in blood and all this. It's like it's a famous scene of Noelle crying. That's like it was a big meme. She brought out Noelle, and she brought out the Dewey, and they all came out and they signed the poster, and then we took a big and this was her idea. I didn't even ask her to get the kids. The kids came out. They thought it was funny. Truthfully, they thought it was. By this point, this had to be probably 2008 or 2009. So it's like 10 years after that came out. So they're teenagers, by this point. And so they thought it was funny. We took a group family shot, but she did say, "If you don't mind, could you not go posting this on, online, because then people could identify where we live. And so I actually didn't. So I didn't post that online. I still don't think I have posted it online. So I actually have to find that picture somewhere, because if it's my understanding they actually don't live at that house anymore. That house was sold, right?
I think you're blowing more kayfabe here, but yeah.
So I think it's safe for me to post that picture. I really got to go through my photo ops.
I mean, I kind of need it I actually need it for the graphics. So if you could find that by sometime tonight or tomorrow, that'd be great.
But I actually have one of the few Beyond the Mat posters signed by Colette and Noelle and Dewey. I also
definitely
got
Colette, definitely Colette and Dewey. Noelle,
yeah.
I don't know how many have since gotten her, but those two for sure.
Yeah, but Mick was not at home at the time, but I got Mick at an event. And also New Jack is on there. I got Dennis Stamp on there. Jake the Snake, I wouldn't sign it because that was his thing. He wouldn't sign Beyond the Mat related things because he thought it made him look bad, which is really funny because, like, if you've ever met Jake, like, there's nothing that could make Jake look worse than, like, just being in his presence. He's one of the
Jake has made himself look bad for decades. Like, it's
right. He's one of the most grotesque individuals I've ever met in my life. In fact, humorously, many years ago, also when I met Stone Cold Steve Austin, one of the things I got Stone Cold Steve Austin to sign was a 2-pack action figures with him and Jake had already signed it. And so Austin sees it and he goes, "Oh, you met Jake? How's he doing?" And I kind of looked at him. I go, "About as well as you'd expect." And Austin just cracked up hysterically laughing and goes, "I probably shouldn't ask that question at all." But it was one of those things where Jake is rough. And so, but I didn't get him to sign that poster. It's a sick poster. I actually have to dig it out and take a picture of it for to put up at some point. It's just, it's stored in a way in a spot that I know taking it out will be a pain in the neck. You know what I mean? And so I didn't. I was going to say,
I'm shocked you haven't sold it yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where its coolness value far exceeds its monetary value, although I guess to the right buyer, it's pretty valuable because how many original theatrical posters of Beyond the Mat are there? I actually saw that during its theatrical run. I saw it in the theater, if you can believe it. Did you
really?
Yeah, me and the same friend who went to the yard sale, we were the only two people in the theater when it was playing. I love that movie. It's a great film.
You didn't even ask him where the video games were when he came out to sign the poster.
I think he had video games, but it was like low value Xbox games. And I'm not like, I know a little bit about how vintage video game values work, but not my friend he can talk about it all day long. But we knew right away that the stuff he had was not valuable enough to bother buying,
Yeah.
It was crap sports games or whatever, something like that. But yeah, that's my story meeting the Foley family. And it's absurd because I do have a photo op with the Foleys in front of their home. It was a blisteringly hot summer day, and I had them sign my Beyond the Mat poster. So try and beat that one, suckers, because that's a weird one. But I stand by it. It was a great time, and I do still have the bra. Should I send you a picture of the edible bra?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to know why Mick didn't eat it. I've seen that man demolish pizzas and all sorts of things in my presence. And he's not eating an edible bra.
So I'll grab and take a nice picture of that, and we'll you guys get to see what that looks like.
Listen, I think next time I see him at Sokol's house, I got to ask him why he didn't eat the edible bra.
You got, yeah. I mean, bring it up. At least show the picture. Absolutely. So we have a couple things coming up in the next couple of weeks. We rescheduled Brad Baylor. So if you have any last minute orders for him, you can still place them on the website. They're still available. The weather has been bad and will continue to be bad, but we have him in about a week and a half or so, and hopefully the weather will be good enough to meet up with him. We had 2 dates, and on both of those dates it snowed. And since there's driving involved with meeting up with him, it just didn't work out, but it's going to come up very soon. He's committed to doing this for sure. We're definitely committed to the people who pre-ordered already. It's going to happen. And I'm going to be honest. We had some time to kill yesterday, so I was really looking at all of the different videos of all of the ID stars who we've worked with so far and who we have booked to work with in the near future. I'm super excited about Brad. Brad's going to the bigs. There's no doubt in my mind. He has a certain vibe he's already funny. His promos are already good and already funny, which is weird because even the guys I like the other guys who we and girls who we worked with, but Brad's promos are so natural that they genuinely make me laugh.
Brad was sort of made in like a WWE superstar factory. Like, these other guys and girls are awesome, and I think they can definitely make it in like a sort of like a Daniel Bryan, Sami Zayn, Finn Balor kind of way. But I mean, this guy was just like 6 foot plus, blonde, funny, can talk, can work. He does his like power slams and different moves. He has that like move set already. He is just built for WWE.
And he's 20. He's 20. Yeah. He's so young that like the sky is the limit.
When the ID thing first started, he like tweeted Randy Orton. There was something about Randy. It was like the anniversary of Randy being the youngest world champion. And he tweeted Randy Orton and WWE saying, basically, I have a year and a half or two. I forget how many years it was. Because he's like, I have X amount of years to break this. And to be perfectly honest, I could believe it. Am I going to go out on a limb and say he will be the youngest WWE world champion? No. I mean, that would be a losing, and that would be a crazy bet to make. But I wouldn't be shocked. Like, he is there already as far as, he's well on his way.
And also they're a lot more willing to push older guys than they used to.
Yeah.
I mean, Savage and Hogan were basically being phased out in their late 30s.
I know. Think about that.
And there are guys who are in their 40s who are still on top of the promotion. So it's definitely a different era, which is, I mean, also the fact is these guys are just so much healthier nowadays. They work out smarter. They don't use drugs and alcohol the way that the people used to in the past to destroy themselves. And so they work. The most important factor is probably they work significantly fewer days a year, so their bodies aren't being demolished every single day. But it really means that it's much harder for the younger guys to get a push to the moon the way that they used to. So, when you look at him, I mean, Hogan himself was very young. He was in his early 20s when he got a push to the moon. So that stuff is interesting. But anyway, Brad is coming. We didn't forget about him. We didn't lose him. It's just the weather in New York and New Jersey and Pennsylvania, Connecticut, the East Coast, it's been terrible. And we're expecting another snowstorm this week, but Brad's going to be after that snowstorm, not before it. So hopefully we take care of that in the next week and a half or so. What else we have? I'm excited. I'm excited about that. You're gonna go to Monster Mania. I am not.
Yeah. We also don't forget from the ID list. We still have Sam Holloway coming up. And
you jumped ahead on the list. You see what happened? I'm still under E. I'm under E. Yeah. We just broke kayfabe for a second. Apologies. Monster Mania, you're doing. I'm not. Big event. I'm coming in later that day, but you're coming in. You're going to be there all day long, running around like a lunatic with your own stuff, with our privates. It's so funny saying the word. Can I say something right now?
Yeah.
Every time I hear you say the word or I say the word privates, inside my head I wince. Okay, we need to come up with a better word than privates for what we're doing. It just sounds weird and wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and we have to really put our heads together and think of a different word other than privates. Because I'm sick of saying privates.
I think it's okay to talk about privates. You just can't show them.
I mean, I just don't want to talk about them either. So if we can come up with a better word, if you have a better suggestion for a word other than privates, I'm all about hearing it. So once again, if you're shopping for autographs, if you want to pick up that Brad Baylor before we do the signing, or you're looking for the other ID people, everything is available on markedoutcollectibles.com. It's also everything's available on our eBay store at Marked Out Collectibles. You will get it cheaper if you buy it from markedoutcollectibles.com though, because you're not paying those eBay fees. So shop there first. To contact us for any reason, email markedoutcollectibles@gmail.com or join the Marked Out Collectibles official marketplace on Facebook. And so
that's where the true deals are, on our Facebook.
Absolutely. Group. Yeah, because there's no fees.
Yeah.
And so we have the private signings coming up. I already talked about Brad Baylor. Go ahead and talk about Sam Holloway.
Yes, we have March 9th. We have Sam Holloway coming in, and Sam Holloway is a mountain of a man. I don't even know if he's going to fit in your living room. He's huge, and he's agile. This dude's jumping over ropes. He's doing all sorts of things. And he's like 6'5", 6'6". He's big. He's another one of those guys where you can teach a lot of things. You can't teach being that size. And Vince may be out, but I mean, pro wrestling is pro wrestling, and there's always a place for a 6-something guy that, towers over the 5'11" and 6-footers of the world. Sam Holloway will be March 9th, and we're excited for that. And we have some other ID stuff in the works. We actually just agreed to one a few days ago that we're not able to announce yet because it's contingent on the announcement. There's an announcement someone else has to make first. But we have another ID coming up. It's locked in.
Yeah, I'm excited about all of it. And we have stuff at the big event. Sasha Banks, Lola Vice, Lita, the Great Khali, Titus O'Neil, Darren Young. We got Tenzan is now available for pre-order on our website. Some really sick images. And again, if you are a fan of 90s New Japan, if you're a fan of modern New Japan, if you are in any way an NWO collector, if you don't get Tenzan now, you will not be getting Tenzan, because that's just it. Tenzan is here once, and he's not coming back. I mean, I've been waiting for Tenzan to be booked for 15 years. Okay, just put that in perspective. I've been waiting for Tenzan to be booked for 15 years, and he still is coming into the show. I'm really, honestly, that big event day, that Saturday, it's going to be a pain in the neck for me to make it to that show. I'm going to have to race from far away to make it there, and I am racing across a significant distance to make it to that show because of Tenzan. It's just one of those things.
Yeah, if you missed him here, you got to wait for his upcoming garage sale. So you don't want to have to do that.
And then you just inked another private signing for us.
Yes, with Ric Flair. And now showing privates with Ric Flair, that's a whole nother thing. So we definitely can't mention
Ric Flair is infamous.
He's the king of privates.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
But yes, we are doing a private with Ric Flair. If you want to send items in, please do. I am promising you every dollar of profits I make is going to just be reinvested into me getting the extra PC stuff I have done. So please donate to the cause. Send your stuff in. Buy some of the sick prints I have. We have metallic 11x17 pay-per-view posters. We have metallic 11x14s, 8x10s. It's stuff that you're not going to get anywhere else. And like I said, I am going to make no money from this because I will spend even more than I make because I'm a lunatic.
Yeah, I mean, but for these guys like Flair, again, I don't mean to be morbid, but just realistically speaking, what are we talking about? In terms of what Flair what does Flair have left in the tank? So if our prices are great, our service is great. Whatever you have on Flair, we'll make it happen. Reach out and we'll make it happen.
You don't want to leave this stuff sitting on your shelf because I mean you don't know how many chances you really are going to have. And honestly, I'll be honest, as a collector, which I am very much so, the stuff I have on my shelf that I want to get done is honestly the thing that pushed me to even consider this on a business level. Because I'm like, well, damn, I got like X amount of things I need done. Let's make this make sense business-wise. And it does, and it did. And I think it's a great opportunity for everybody.
So get those Flair orders in. There's no other way to say. I'm contemplating. We discussed it yesterday, and I said I have nothing for Flair because I got a bunch of stuff done. Was it a year or so ago or 2 years ago at Steel City? I'm contemplating, recognizing that this is pretty much it. I think our last private with Flair was 4 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So just doing the math, this is probably it for us as far as getting us having this level of access to Flair. So I'm thinking about possibly coming up with an item or two, just because.
I think you should.
It's Ric Flair, Honestly, I'm going to take a look at the prints you made. Maybe grab one. So because I saw the one I saw that I really like. It's just I just hesitate to buy prints because I just know that I will never hang them up pursuant to our conversation last week.
Damn museums.
I know. It's funny. I received tons and tons of private feedback to the people who I made reference to on that episode. Were like, I didn't expect for you to talk about me on this episode. So, but that's how it goes. We can only talk about what we lived through and experienced. So, I guess that's it for this week. You have anything else about anything we talked about? Bill Murray?
No. I hope he has a garage sale one day. That's about it.
I hope that for the rest of this tour, Bill Murray's photo ops are all group, so that at least our individual ones are a little bit more scarce.
Yeah, that'd be pretty nice.
Then that's and that right there is what this hobby is all about. Is lording over what you have, lording over other people what you have that they do not.
Correct.
All right. So for markedout.com, Marked Out Collectibles, and Marked Out Radio, I'm Sean.
And I'm Dana.
And we will see you next week.